Hello, and welcome to the Mythic Archive. Today I want to take you back, further back than we have ever gone before. Before King Arthur pulled the sword from the stone, before Beowulf sailed the whale road, before Achilles raged at the walls of Troy, before the Bible was written. We're going back to the dawn of civilization itself, to the land between the rivers, Mesopotamia, to the great city of Uruk. In the mid-19th century, archaeologists digging in the ruins of Nineveh found something strange. They found a library, the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal. Amidst the debris were thousands of broken clay tablets covered in wedge-shaped marks called cuneiform. For years, these tablets sat in the British Museum, untranslated. Until one day, a man named George Smith began to read them. As he deciphered the ancient signs, he became so excited that he began to undress himself in the laboratory. He had found the original story of the Great Flood. But more than that, he had found the story of a man who was 2/3 God and 1/3 human, a man who built the greatest walls the world had ever seen, a man who loved and lost and traveled to the edge of the universe to conquer death. This is the epic of Gilgamesh. The story begins with the walls. Look at it, the poet tells us. Inspect the foundation terrace and examine the masonry. Is it not burnt brick and good? These walls were built by Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. He was a giant of a man, physically perfect, wise, and strong. But he was not a good king, not yet. When our story opens, Gilgamesh is a tyrant. He is a force of nature that cannot be contained. He has no equal, no friend, and no one to tell him no. He takes whatever he wants. He works his young men to death building his monuments. And worst of all, he claims the droit du seigneur, the right of the first night. He sleeps with every bride before her husband does. He leaves no girl to her mother, no daughter to her warrior. The city of Uruk groaned under his oppression. The people cried out to the gods of heaven. "You created this wild bull," they prayed. "Now create his equal. Create a counterbalance to calm his heart so that Uruk may have peace." The gods listened. The goddess Aruru, the mother of creation, washed her hands. She pinched off a piece of clay and cast it onto the steppe. In the wilderness, she created the valiant Enkidu. He was the primitive man, the archetype of the wild. He was covered in matted hair like the god of cattle. He knew nothing of cultivated land or people. He ate grass with the gazelles. He drank at the water holes with the wild beasts. He was innocent. He was strong. He was the mirror image of Gilgamesh. While Gilgamesh was the city, civilized, cruel, and structured, Enkidu was the steppe, wild, free, and chaotic. But the worlds of the wild and the city could not stay separate forever. A trapper, a hunter, encountered Enkidu at a watering hole. The hunter was terrified. This wild man was dismantling his traps, filling in his pits, and setting the animals free. The hunter went to his father, and his father told him to go to Uruk. "Go to Gilgamesh," the father said. "Ask him for a harlot, a temple priestess named Shamhat. Let her conquer the wild man. If he sees her beauty, he will approach her, and his beasts will reject him." The hunter went to Uruk and returned with Shamhat. She was not just a prostitute in the modern sense. She was a servant of Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Her role was sacred. They waited by the watering hole. When Enkidu arrived, Shamhat did not hide. She revealed herself. Enkidu was captivated. They made love for 6 days and 7 nights. It was an act that transformed him. When he was sated, he tried to run back to his gazelles, but the animals shied away. They ran from him. Enkidu tried to run after them, but his knees gave way. He was no longer a beast. He had been diminished in speed, but he had been expanded in mind. He had reason. He returned to Shamhat. She taught him how to be human. She gave him bread, which he had never tasted. She gave him beer, which he drank until his heart felt light and his face glowed. She clothed him. Enkidu had become a man. But becoming a man means learning about injustice. Shamhat told him about Uruk. She told him about Gilgamesh. She told him about the king who sleeps with the brides. Enkidu's face grew pale. "I will go to Uruk," he declared. "I will challenge him. I will change the old order." Enkidu entered Uruk. The people gathered around him, marveling at his size. "He looks like Gilgamesh," they whispered. "He is the shorter in stature, but the stronger in bone." That night, a wedding bed was prepared. Gilgamesh approached the house to claim his right, but he found the street blocked. Enkidu stood in the gateway. He put out his foot. He would not let the king pass. Gilgamesh was shocked. No one had ever defied him. He attacked. They grappled in the street. It was a fight of titans. They wrestled like bulls. They smashed the doorposts. The walls shook. They fought until they were both exhausted, their knees bent, their chests heaving. And then something miraculous happened. The rage evaporated. Gilgamesh looked at Enkidu and saw for the first time an equal. Someone who could stop him. Someone who could understand him. He did not kill Enkidu. He embraced him. They kissed. And a friendship was formed that would become the emotional core of the entire epic. Gilgamesh introduced Enkidu to his mother, the goddess Ninsun. She adopted Enkidu as her own son. The tyrant was no longer alone. But a hero needs a quest, and Gilgamesh, bored with peace and eager for fame, proposed a journey that was sheer madness. He proposed to travel to the Cedar Forest, the dwelling place of the gods, and kill its guardian. Gilgamesh grew bored. Peace was not enough for a man who was two-thirds god. He looked to the horizon and declared a quest that was sheer madness. He proposed to travel to the Cedar Forest, the dwelling place of the gods, and kill its guardian, the demon Humbaba. The elders of Uruk were horrified. They begged him not to go. "Humbaba is a force of nature," they said. "His roar is the flood, his mouth is fire, and his breath is death. Why do you wish to die?" But Gilgamesh laughed. He wanted to stamp his name on bricks that would last forever. Before they left, they visited Gilgamesh's mother, the goddess Ninsun. She was wise and pale as the wild cow. She did not try to stop them, for she knew her son's destiny. Instead, she climbed to the roof of the temple. She lit incense to Shamash, the sun god, and she asked a question that echoes through every parent's heart. "O Shamash," she prayed, "why did you give my son a restless heart? You have moved him to go on a journey from which he may not return." She accepted that he must go. Then she did something crucial. She turned to Enkidu, the orphan of the wild. She placed a token around his neck and adopted him. "You were not born of my womb," she said, "but now I speak to you as my son." She charged Enkidu with protecting his brother. It was a sacred trust, a trust that Enkidu would die to keep. They set out. The epic describes their journey with superhuman statistics. Every day they walked 50 leagues. In 3 days they covered a distance that would take ordinary men 6 weeks. As they traveled, Gilgamesh had nightmares. He dreamed of mountains falling on him. He dreamed of a wild bull attacking him. He dreamed of fire raining from the sky. Each morning, he woke up terrified, begging Enkidu to explain the dreams. and each morning Enkidu, perhaps lying to comfort his friend, gave the dreams a positive twist. "The mountain is Humbaba," Enkidu said. "We will catch him. The bull is Shamash the protector. Do not fear." Finally they arrived at the Cedar Forest. They stood at the gate. They fell silent. They looked at the height of the cedars. The trees were majestic, ancient and sacred to the gods. The path was straight and well trodden by Humbaba. The mountain of the cedars was the dwelling place of the gods, the throne of Ishtar. It was a place of supreme beauty, but also of supreme danger. They hesitated. Fear gripped them, but they encouraged each other. "Two people, companions, can prevail," Gilgamesh said. "A 3-ply rope is not easily broken." They stepped across the threshold. They entered the forbidden zone. They began to chop down the trees. The sound of the axe rang through the silence. Humbaba heard it. The guardian approached. The tablets describe Humbaba in a way that is truly nightmarish. His face was like coiled entrails, a shifting mass of lines and horror. He had the strength of a storm. He roared at them. "Why have you come here? Enkidu, you son of a fish, you who do not know your father, and you, Gilgamesh, king of flesh." Humbaba used psychological warfare. He told Enkidu he would feed his flesh to the birds. He terrified Gilgamesh so much that the king's knees shook and he dropped his axe. Gilgamesh cried out to Shamash, the sun god, "Help me, I have followed your road, now save me." The gods do not fight fair. Shamash heard the prayer. He did not send a weapon. He sent the weather. He unleashed the 13 great winds against Humbaba, the north wind, the south wind, the tempest, and the hurricane. The winds struck Humbaba from all sides. They blinded his eyes. They pinned his arms. The giant could not move forward. He could not move backward. He was immobilized by the power of the sun. Gilgamesh and Enkidu advanced. They were no longer fighting a monster. They were executing a prisoner. Humbaba knew he was defeated. He began to beg. "Gilgamesh, let me go free," he pleaded. "I will be your servant. I will cut down the trees for you. I will build you a palace." Gilgamesh, who was still young and perhaps naive, was moved. His heart softened. He considered showing mercy. But Enkidu was the voice of harsh reality. He knew the wild. He knew that a wounded beast is the most dangerous. "Do not listen to him, my friend," Enkidu said. "If you let him go, he will kill you. Kill him before the great god Enlil hears us." Enlil appointed him. "We must finish this before the gods realize what we have done." Humbaba heard this. He turned his desperate eyes to Enkidu. "You," he spat. "You are jealous. You fear he will replace you with me." But seeing that death was inevitable, Humbaba uttered a curse that would shape the rest of the epic. "May the two of you not grow old together. May Enkidu find no peace in this life." Gilgamesh hardened his heart. He swung the axe. He struck the neck. Enkidu struck the second blow. The third blow severed the head. The guardian was dead. The forest shook. For 2 leagues, the cedars shuddered. They had won. They had killed the monster. But they had also committed a sacrilege. They had killed a servant of Enlil, the king of the gods. And the curse of a dying demon is not a thing to be taken lightly. They returned to Uruk. They washed the filth of the battle from their hair. They cleaned their weapons. Gilgamesh put on his royal sash and his crown. He was perfection. He was glory incarnate. And he attracted the attention of the highest power. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, looked down from heaven. She saw Gilgamesh's beauty, and she wanted him. She descended to the palace. She did not offer him a quest. She offered him the world. "Come, Gilgamesh, be my bridegroom," she said. "Give me your fruit. I will give you a chariot of lapis lazuli and gold, with wheels of gold and horns of electrum. I will harness storm demons as your horses. When you enter our house, kings and princes will bow down to you. They will bring you the tribute of the mountains and the plains." It was an offer that no mortal man could refuse. Power, wealth, divine marriage. But Gilgamesh was not an ordinary man, and he was certainly not a fool. He knew who Ishtar was. He knew her history. Instead of accepting, he delivered one of the most savage insults in the history of literature. He looked the goddess in the eye and said, "What would I get if I married you? You are a brazier that goes out in the cold. You are a back door that lets in the blizzard. You are a shoe that bites the owner's foot." He then proceeded to list her ex-lovers. He reminded her of Tammuz, the shepherd, whom she doomed to weep in the underworld. He reminded her of the roller bird whose wings she broke. He reminded her of the lion, perfect in strength, for whom she dug 7 pits. He reminded her of the horse, whom she destined for the whip and the spur. "And if you love me," Gilgamesh concluded, "you will treat me like them." He rejected the goddess of love. He rejected her with the truth. Ishtar was furious. She ascended to heaven in a rage. She went to her father, Anu, the sky god. She wept. She demanded vengeance. "Father, give me the bull of heaven," she screamed. "I want to destroy Gilgamesh." Anu hesitated. He warned her, "If I give you the bull of heaven, there will be 7 years of famine in the land of Uruk. Have you gathered enough grain for the people?" Ishtar lied, or perhaps she simply didn't care. She claimed she had provided for the people. But then she played her trump card. She threatened a zombie apocalypse. "If you do not give me the bull," she said, "I will smash the doors of the underworld. I will bring up the dead to eat the living, and the dead will outnumber the living." Terrified by this threat, Anu gave her the leash of the bull of heaven. Ishtar led the beast down to Uruk. The bull was a weapon of mass destruction. With its first snort, a pit opened in the earth, and 100 young men fell in and died. With its second snort, another pit opened, and 200 more fell in. With its third snort, it charged at Enkidu. The river Euphrates lowered by 7 cubits as the beast drank. The land cracked. The city shook. This was not a forest guardian. This was a cosmic disaster. Enkidu fell into the pit up to his waist, but he jumped out. He seized the bull by its horns. The bull spat slobber into his face. It swished its tail, covering him in filth. But Enkidu knew the wild. He knew how to handle a beast. He circled behind it and seized it by the thick of its tail. He set his foot on its hock. He shouted to Gilgamesh, "Friend, I have him. Strike now. Thrust your sword between the nape of the neck and the horns." Gilgamesh, bold and precise, drove his sword deep into the bull's neck. The beast shuddered and fell. The earth stopped shaking. They had done the impossible. They had killed a God-sent plague. They cut out the bull's heart and offered it to Shamash. They stepped back and bowed to the sun god. But Ishtar ascended the wall of Uruk. She was wailing. She was humiliated. "Woe to Gilgamesh," she cried, "who has slandered me and killed the bull of heaven." And then Enkidu made a mistake. A mistake born of adrenaline, pride, and hubris. He heard the goddess cursing his friend. He tore the right thigh off the bull of heaven, and he threw it in Ishtar's face. "If I could catch you," Enkidu shouted at the goddess, I would do the same to you. I would drape his guts over your arms. It was the ultimate blasphemy. You do not throw meat at a goddess. You do not threaten the Queen of Heaven. Ishtar gathered her temple prostitutes and mourned over the thigh of the bull. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu washed their hands in the Euphrates. They rode through the streets of Uruk in triumph. The people cheered. Gilgamesh asked the women of the palace, "Who is the most beautiful among heroes? Who is the most magnificent among men?" And they answered, "Gilgamesh." They celebrated deep into the night. But while the men drank and boasted, the gods were holding a council. Enkidu fell asleep, and in his sleep he had a dream of a door opening, a dream of a judgment. He woke up crying. "My friend," he said to Gilgamesh, "why are the great gods in council?" The party was over. The bill had come due. Enkidu recounted his dream to Gilgamesh. It was a vision of the gods in council. Anu, the father of the gods, spoke. "Because they have killed the bull of heaven, and because they have killed Humbaba, one of the two must die." It was a cold, bureaucratic decision. Shamash, the sun god who had helped them, tried to defend them. He argued that they acted under his command. But Enlil, the god of earth and wind, was furious. He accused Shamash of being their comrade, of descending to their level. Enlil turned to the assembly and passed the sentence. "Gilgamesh shall not die," he decreed, "but Enkidu shall die." The gavel fell. The fate was sealed. Enkidu woke up sick. A fever gripped his body. He lay on his bed, the strength of the wild draining out of him hour by hour. He realized that this was not a battle he could fight with his fists. He was being unmade by the very gods who made him. As the sickness worsened, Enkidu fell into a rage. He began to curse the things that had brought him from the wild. He cursed the cedar door he had made. He cursed the hunter who found him. And most of all, he cursed Shamhat, the woman who had civilized him. "Let me curse you with a great curse," he screamed. "May you never make a home. May the drunkard soil your festive robe. May you sleep in the dust of the street." He blamed civilization for his death. If he had stayed a beast, he would still be running with the gazelles. But then, a voice came from heaven. It was Shamash. The sun god spoke gently. "Enkidu, why do you curse my harlot, Shamhat? Did she not feed you bread fit for a god? Did she not give you ale fit for a king? And did she not give you Gilgamesh, the greatest friend a man could have?" Enkidu heard the truth in the god's words. His anger broke. He realized that despite the pain, his life with Gilgamesh had been worth it. He retracted his curse. He blessed Shamhat instead. "May kings and princes love you," he whispered. "May men open their treasure chests for you." He made his peace with his life, just in time to face his death. Enkidu slept again and had a final vision. A somber-faced birdman seized him and dragged him down to the House of Darkness, the dwelling of Uruk. This is one of the most vivid descriptions of the afterlife in ancient literature, and it is terrifying. It is not a place of judgment or reward. It is a place of dust. "I entered the house where those who sit in darkness see no light," Enkidu told Gilgamesh. "They are clothed like birds, with wings for garments. They eat dust. Their food is clay." He saw the crowns of ancient kings piled up in a corner. Even the high priests and the servants of the gods were there, covered in dust. Death, in the Mesopotamian view, was the great equalizer. It was a bleak, gray existence, where even the mightiest hero was reduced to a bird pecking at the dirt. Enkidu woke up screaming, For 12 days he lay in agony. On the 12th day he called out to Gilgamesh, "My friend, the great goddess has cursed me. I shall not die like a man fallen in battle. I die in shame." And then the wild man breathed his last. Enkidu was gone. The king of Uruk looked at his friend. He touched his heart, but it did not beat. He covered his friend's face like a bride. And then Gilgamesh began to rage like a lioness robbed of her cubs. He paced back and forth. He tore off his royal robes and threw them down as if they were abominations. He issued a proclamation to the land. "Hear me, elders of Uruk. I weep for Enkidu, my friend." He listed all the adventures they had shared, the mountains they climbed, the monsters they killed. He called on the wild beasts, the trees, the rivers, and the stars to mourn with him. He commissioned a statue of Enkidu made of gold and lapis lazuli, but he could not let go. He refused to give the body up for burial. He sat by the corpse for 6 days and 7 nights, hoping that his grief would bring his friend back. He waited until a worm fell out of Enkidu's nose. That was the moment the reality hit him. The finality of biological decay. Gilgamesh was struck by a terror that was deeper than grief. "I'm going to die," he realized. "I'm going to be like Enkidu. I'm going to be dust." The king of Uruk, the slayer of Humbaba, was afraid. He could not stay in the city. He threw away his crown. He put on the skin of a lion, and he ran into the wilderness. The quest for fame was over. The quest for immortality had begun. Gilgamesh wandered the wild. He hunted lions and ate their flesh raw. He was no longer the golden king of Uruk. He was a desperate animal. He was looking for one man, Utnapishtim the Faraway. This was the only human being who had survived the Great Flood and been granted immortality by the gods. Gilgamesh believed that if he could find him, he could learn the secret of eternal life. He traveled to the ends of the earth until he reached the twin peaks of Mount Mashu. This was the place where the sun rose and set. The gate was guarded by the scorpion men. These were terrifying beings, half man and half scorpion, whose radiance was terrifying and whose glance was death. When the scorpion man saw Gilgamesh, he called to his wife, "Look, the one who comes to us has the flesh of the gods." His wife replied, "Only 2/3 is God, 1/3 is human." The scorpion man challenged Gilgamesh. "Why have you traveled this far? The path you seek is impossible." Gilgamesh explained his grief. He explained that he was afraid of death. The scorpion man looked at him with something like pity. He opened the gate. "Go, Gilgamesh," he said, "but be warned. You must pass through the tunnel of the sun. It is 12 leagues of absolute darkness. If the sun catches you inside, you will be burned to ash." Gilgamesh entered the tunnel. For the first league, the darkness was thick. There was no light before him or behind him. He ran. He ran for hours. At 4 leagues, the darkness pressed in on him. At 8 leagues, he shouted out in fear, but only echoes answered. At 9 leagues, he felt the north wind on his face. At 11 leagues, the dawn light appeared. At 12 leagues, just as the sun was about to enter the tunnel to scorch the earth, Gilgamesh burst out into the fresh air. He had outrun the sun. He found himself in a garden of the gods. The bushes bore gems instead of thorns. Carnelian hung from the vines. Lapis lazuli leaves clustered thick. It was paradise. And there at the edge of the sea lived a woman named Siduri. She was a tavern keeper, a winemaker for the gods. When she saw Gilgamesh approaching, she was terrified. He looked like a murderer. He was gaunt. His face was sunken. and he wore the skin of a beast. She ran inside her tavern and barred the door. Gilgamesh pounded on the door. He threatened to smash it down. "I am Gilgamesh," he shouted. "I killed the bull of heaven. I killed Humbaba." Siduri opened the door a crack. "If you are Gilgamesh," she asked, "why are your cheeks so hollow? Why is there such despair in your heart?" Gilgamesh poured out his soul to her. He told her about Enkidu. He told her about the worm that fell from his nose. "I am afraid of death," he confessed. "I roam the open country because I do not want to die." Siduri listened, and then she gave him the most famous advice in the epic. It is the philosophy of carpe diem. "Gilgamesh," she said, "you will never find the life for which you are searching. When the gods created man, they allotted to him death, but life they retained in their own keeping. So fill your belly, day and night make merry. Let your clothes be clean, wash your head, cherish the little child that holds your hand, and make your wife happy in your embrace. For this is the lot of man." It was beautiful advice. It was the advice to be human, but Gilgamesh rejected it. He did not want to be a happy mortal. He wanted to be an immortal god. He asked her the way to Utnapishtim. Reluctantly, Siduri told him. "There is no crossing the ocean," she said. "Only Shamash crosses it. The waters are the waters of death. If you touch them, you die instantly." She told him to find Urshanabi, the ferryman of Utnapishtim. She told him Urshanabi was in the woods with the stone things. Gilgamesh, in his typical rage, rushed into the woods. He saw the stone things, mysterious artifacts that likely allowed the boat to cross the lethal waters safely, and he smashed them. He shattered them in his fury. When he finally found Urshanabi, the ferryman looked at the broken stones and shook his head. "Your own hands have prevented the crossing," he said. "Those stones protected us." But Gilgamesh was strong. Urshanabi told him to go into the forest and cut 120 punting poles, each 60 cubits long. They launched the boat. When they reached the lethal waters, Gilgamesh used the poles to push the boat. He used one pole, then discarded it so the deadly water wouldn't touch his hand. He used the second, then the third. Finally, he ran out of poles. They were still drifting. In a final act of desperation, Gilgamesh stripped off his clothes and held them up with his arms to act as a sail. He literally used his own body to catch the wind. They drifted toward the shore of the Faraway. Utnapishtim was watching them from the beach. Gilgamesh finally met Utnapishtim the Faraway. He asked him, "How did you find the secret of life? You look just like me." Utnapishtim sighed and told him a secret of the gods. He told him the story of the deluge. This is the moment that shocked the Victorian world when it was first translated, because it predates the biblical story of Noah by centuries. Utnapishtim said that long ago the gods decided to destroy mankind simply because they were too noisy. Enlil could not sleep, but the god Ea whispered a warning to Utnapishtim through a reed wall. "Tear down your house and build a boat," Ea said. "Abandon wealth and seek living beings." Utnapishtim built a giant ship, a perfect cube. He loaded it with the seed of all living creatures. The storm came. It was so terrifying that even the gods retreated to the highest heaven and crouched like dogs in fear. For 6 days and 7 nights, the wind blew. On the 7th day, the ocean calmed. Utnapishtim released a dove, then a swallow, and finally a raven. When the raven did not return, he knew it had found land. He offered a sacrifice. The gods smelled the sweet savor and gathered like flies. Enlil was furious that a human had survived, but Ea calmed him. As a reward, or perhaps an apology, Enlil touched Utnapishtim's forehead and granted him immortality. "But who," Utnapishtim asked Gilgamesh, "will call the gods to assembly for you?" Utnapishtim offered Gilgamesh a challenge. "If you wish to conquer death," he said, "first try to conquer sleep. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. It seemed easy, but Gilgamesh was exhausted from his journey. As soon as he sat down, sleep swept over him like a fog. He slept for 7 days. To prove it, Utnapishtim told his wife to bake a loaf of bread for every day he slept and place it by his head. When Gilgamesh finally woke up, he claimed he had only been asleep for a moment. But Utnapishtim pointed to the bread. The first loaf was hard as a rock, the second was leathery, the third was soggy, the fourth was moldy. The evidence of his failure was rotting right next to him. Gilgamesh wept. "What shall I do, Utnapishtim? Where shall I go? The snatcher has hold of my flesh. In my bedroom lurks death, and wherever I set my foot, there is death." He realized he was just a man. He could not even conquer a nap, let alone the grave. Utnapishtim banished Urshanabi the ferryman for bringing Gilgamesh there, telling him to take the king home. But as a parting gift, Utnapishtim told Gilgamesh a secret. There was a plant that grew underwater. It possessed a thorn like a rose. If a man ate it, he would not live forever, but he would return to his youth. It was the plant, How the Old Man Becomes Young. Gilgamesh tied stones to his feet, dove into the deep, and found the plant. He cut it loose and brought it to the surface. He was overjoyed. He told Urshanabi, "I will take this to Uruk. I will give it to the old men to eat to test it. Then I will eat it myself and return to my youth." He had a second chance, but on the way back, they stopped at a cool spring to bathe. Gilgamesh left the plant on the ground. A snake smelled the fragrance of the flower. It came up from the water, stole the plant, and ate it. Immediately, the snake shed its skin, leaving the old husk behind and slithering away, shiny and young. Gilgamesh came out of the water and saw the skin. He sat down and wept. The tears ran down his nose. "For whom have I labored?" he asked Urshanabi. "For whom have I poured out my heart's blood? I have not secured any good deed for myself, but done a good deed for the reptile." The irony was absolute. The immortality he sought belonged only to the snake. They returned to Uruk. They arrived at the Great Walls. And here the poem comes full circle. Gilgamesh did not return as a god. He returned as a man. But he was no longer a tyrant. He looked at the city he had built. He turned to Urshanabi and repeated the words that opened the epic. "Go up, Urshanabi, onto the wall of Uruk and walk around. Inspect the foundation terrace and examine the masonry. Is it not burnt brick and good? Did not the 7 sages lay its foundations?" In that moment, Gilgamesh realized the truth. He would not live forever in the flesh, but his work would live. His city would live. His story would live. He went into the palace and wrote his travels on a tablet of lapis lazuli. He locked it in a copper box so that thousands of years later we could find it and read it. Gilgamesh died. But because he wrote his story, he achieved the only immortality available to humans, remembrance. He conquered death not by escaping it, but by accepting it and building something that could outlast it.